Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Talking Headless show. This is a show about analysts and analyst relations. My name is Shashi Bellamkonda. My day job is being an analyst for the Infotech Research Group, but whatever I say here is in no reflection to my job. We are here just to have fun. The reason this show was created was that the analyst relations community and tech analysts in general needs more visibility in the community. So that's the purpose of this show. Today, I have some really fantastic guests. First off, we'll be meeting Gary Frazier. I've known Gary for some time now, a very respected, seasoned professional. He has been building relationships both in PR and in with industry analysts, and shaping product strategy and market positioning for all the companies that he's worked for. I'm also excited to have Carter Lusher. If you ever Google an OG for both analyst relations and analysts, his name does come up quite often in the engine of your choice, maybe even on ChatGPT. So he's been a long-time industry analyst, has a lot of deep knowledge on technology trends. And, he probably, you'll all agree, can cut through the noise and provide clear, actionable advice to both vendors and end users. And he's part of Lusher Advisory. Gary Frazier is part of Conga. So let me start by bringing Gary Frazier up. As you can all see that I have a beautiful Southern accent, but from the south of India, actually. But Gary has an even more beautiful accent. Hey, Gary, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Shashi. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So
Great to
let's
talk
start
to a
off.
fellow Southerner.
Yes, Southerners from two different places, right?
Yes.
Yes. So I don't know if I did a good job introducing you, but I have met you personally. I think I respected a lot of what you do in terms of establishing relationships. So why don't you start off with introducing yourself?
Thank you, Sashi. I really just want to say it's a real pleasure and honor to be on with you and with Carter, two guys whom I respect so much, and great meeting you in person, earlier this year at our user conference, and thanks for attending there. So yeah, I'm the analyst relations director at Conga. I've been here for about 3 years, a little over 3 years now. Conga is a cloud software provider of best of breed solutions for configure, price, and quote, for contract lifecycle management, for document automation. And we deliver those all together, seamlessly integrated on our own SaaS platform as well as on the Salesforce platform. And together, these solutions really help our customers, work where they want to work, and helps them accelerate their journey to become a more connected and intelligent business by maximizing revenue while minimizing risk and complexity. I think I got it all in there.
Yes, you got it all in there. But let's talk about Gary, the person. How did you get into analyst relations? What were the mountains you had to climb? And what is the kind of fishing that you did to your job? I think people will want to know why I said fishing.
Yeah, that's funny because I'm headed out to the lake to go fishing for the rest of the week after this. So, but corporate communications is kind of like fishing. You are trying to land as big a fish as you can, and you got to have the right lures, you got to have the right bait, you got to move it the right way, to draw attention to yourselves, and so that's important. But me personally, my journey started out in journalism. I was actually a newspaper reporter at the beginning of my career. And then the person that became my wife helped me make the decision that I needed to actually make money, which you can't really do as a newspaper reporter, especially in rural Alabama. So I got into marketing. And since then, over the last 30 plus years, I've gone from everything from technical writing to product marketing to corporate communications, which covered, media relations and analyst relations and investor relations, as well as employee communications. And those last two, you really don't want to do. I really not want to do those again. But I love the analyst relations role because of the personal connection that you get to make with just great people such as yourself, as well as people, in the community of AR like Carter. That's just a wonderful job. And, you're able to separate from like PR and media relations where you're having to deal with 100 or more, editors sometimes. And you can't really build a relationship with them. When you're really focused in on a dozen or so key analysts, you really can have a personal relationship. And that's what I really enjoy about the job the absolute most.
Thanks. And let's say hello to everybody who's listening. This is being broadcast live, not only on LinkedIn Live, but almost every streaming network that's there, other than Instagram, which I'll make comments later. But hello, Leonard. Thank you so much for joining. So, Gary, one thing that would probably help the community understand is your perspective on building credibility for AR at the executive level. And also maybe it's a connected question, or it could be a separate question on measuring AI ROI for AR programs.
Yeah, that's always the biggest challenge, I think, for analyst relations professionals like myself, is that ROI metrics conversation. And like you said, that is obviously, of course, tied with getting, attention and recognition and engagement from your executive team. So the easiest thing for us to do as AR professionals is to simply measure, right, the number of engagements, the number of activities tracking, and then also your coverage. And that's what most of us will do. And that's kind of the baseline, the foundational metric, right? But so much more important is for us to tie what we're doing to revenue, to ARR, to the business aspects of our company. And honestly, that's really a struggle because, like so many other things in analyst relations, it's dependent upon other people, helping us, providing us with information. Here at Conga, I've actually been pretty lucky about that. I have a competitive intelligence team that helps me by sharing win-loss analyses with me whenever analyst or research, the name, Gartner, Forrester, IDC, whatever is mentioned in those conversations, I get a heads up. And I also can get reports from the research that we've been able to help produce that we're included in. I get reports on the amount of leads generated and pipeline generated from those. So I am actually able to tie my activities to actual, business goals. But of course, we all know what everybody cares about is which quadrant are you in? That's what everybody wants to tie it back to. And that's another challenge.
So in the past few years, how has analyst relations changed? What are some trends you're seeing?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. Some things are still the same, though. It's still about the people. It's about the personal one-to-one relationships that can make the real difference for you. But AI is really, really changing a lot of what we're doing. It hasn't changed for me in the way that it has made people that I work with less dependent or reliant on me, but it has helped make me less reliant on other people. And I'll give you a couple of examples. For instance, in my last role when I was doing analyst relations for NCR, I had a support team from our PR firm that focused in on analyst relations, and they would come in and would be on the line with me for inquiries and briefings and taking down all the notes, and I would get a transcript and they would be able to summarize it for me. Well, I don't have an agency support here anymore, but I don't need one because the AI tools that I use do all of those things for me. Another way that it's really helped, we have an internal AI tool that helps me complete my responses to RFIs from the various analyst firms that we work with. I used to have to go to our proposals team and say, hey, can you, here's a 200 question, RFI with a lot of complex questions, and can you provide a first draft of this for me? Now I'm able to do that using our internal AI tools. that we're actually fine tuning ourselves. Our IT team has put together something that's really nice, and the sources that it uses, the LLMs, are from our knowledge base articles, from our product documentation, from the tools that our proposals team uses. So I just get really comprehensive responses back, and I'm able to fine tune it to get the type of responses back. If I want something that can only be used externally, I'm able to filter that in that way. So that really helps. And then I'm able to, I just completed a listening tour of my stakeholders, because those that are familiar with Conga may know we have had some new blood coming into our executive team, and that has sort of created a wave of new blood coming in across the company in certain areas. So I've done another listening tour to learn and meet my stakeholders. And because I have an AI tool that's listening and taking notes and recording the conversation, I'm actually able to just talk and have a conversation with someone and actually actively listen rather than trying to take down the notes. And then the tool summarizes and pulls out the key insights and the action items of that for me, which would have taken me forever to do that in nearly 24 conversations. I was able to do it in 5-10 minutes and provide a report to my boss. So I felt pretty good about that. And that's really been the main things that's changed for me. Like I said, it's still about the personal connections. It's still about understanding the people I'm supporting internally and what their wants and needs are. And it's also understanding the analysts that I deal with and what makes their job easier and what keeps them up at night trying to cover our company.
Very nice. Thank you. I think Leonard asked a question about I'm being asked how my work is generating leads. So before you answer the question, I want to recap what I heard from you the last few minutes, especially for people who joined late. Of course, this is going to be live. If you're watching this recording, and you obviously know what, but here's what I heard. Number one is your customer intelligence team can provide you insights about how look at win-loss and provide you intelligence on whether the prospect has talked to an analyst or not. I think that's a great way to do that. Number two is for repeated RFIs, you have your own intelligent AI tool that can correlate information based on what questions have been answered before, and then you add more stuff to that. Number three, I think, has been very useful almost to everybody, is the ability to transcribe when you're talking to people and look at the transcription later. I think that's a very good tool. You actually said 4 things. The fourth thing I think people forget is how important it is to have a listening tour, not only when new people join, but even, I actually tell both technology and marketing teams to actually invite them to hackathons or think and drink events, because their knowledge about your function may be very dated. So it's always good to do that. So kudos to you on doing that. Other than your technology yourself, what have you seen other people using in terms of tools? How do you manage being a single person AR team? And you also work for organizations that have larger teams. What resources do they need, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I'm glad you asked that, because I've learned a lot about what kinds of tools I need to use to help me survive and thrive as a one-man band with so many demands on my time. By networking with other analyst relations people, including people like Carter, that just have a wealth of experience and a wealth of knowledge. And I would never be able to learn it on my own but I can spend, 15 minutes, 20 minutes or go to a networking event and spend time with folks like Carter, who'll be on soon, and just learn a million things that I never would have known. And it's really helped me a lot. And it's a challenge because there are so many tools out there, so many different AI tools for, helping you respond to an RFI, or to capture the insights from your engagements and everything. And it's a question of, where do I find that information? How do I know which tool is right for me? And it is, once again, it goes back to those personal relationships and talking to other experts that have done it. And that's what's great about the AR community is we're all willing to help each other. I've actually had conversations actually with AR people that are at companies that we compete with, or coopete, or whatever the right word is. We compete and and one of us is a client of the other, or we're both clients of each other. It's just a great community. And it's really interesting right now because we have now an initiative at Conga to leverage the AI tools that I've started using and others are using to make it easier for our customer facing employees like sales and customer success and others to find the marketing assets that they need and the sales enablement assets that they need, and not knowing, hey, is that in brand folder, or is that in a Primo, or is that on SharePoint or whatever. Going forward, they'll just need to know where this chat bot is, where this agent is, and just say, look, I need a slide that tells our story around this particular market or technology or whatever. And they won't need to know where those assets are. The agent will just go out and find them and build the slide or the email or whatever it is that they need. And I think that's what we're all trying to get to.
Great examples. I'm actually going to be speaking at the Marketing Profs Conference in November. And one of the things that I'm speaking about is practical examples from sales and marketing. And also, I'm going to say it's not really easy. It's not just go and put some stuff in LLM of your choice and it comes to you. I want to ask you another question. Thinking back about your career, what are some aha moments that you had where either people stopped you in the corridor or sent you a message and said like, wow, this is really great. Sometimes it might be being on the quadrant, but are there other experiences where, even without metrics, you thought like, this was a great moment. I love my job today because I got this comment.
Yeah, there's one recent moment that comes to mind. Earlier in the year, I was at a meeting of the Forrester AR Council. I've been a member of that council for a while, and that's one of the areas where I mentioned having these great relationships with other AR pros. And I was asked to do a session on creating a market through AR, a market segment. And as you're aware, Shashi, revenue lifecycle management is a market that Conga has helped to develop and create and, really become a leader in. And I was able to present work over the past 2 years that we have done, Conga and myself personally, to build that sort of understanding and acceptance of that market, and then even have analysts start to use the term revenue lifecycle management in their research and mention Conga as a leader in that market in published research. And so that was the culmination of tons of work, tons of engagement, tons of inquiries with analysts to help myself and my stakeholders understand what revenue lifecycle management actually means out in the broader market outside of the four walls of Conga. And so I thought maybe a few people will come to that session, and it actually ended up being a standing room only session because it was such a, so many people were interested in the topic. And then I was asked to do a virtual session after that because there were people that, weren't able to do that track. They had to go to another track, and people really wanted to hear that story. So that gives you a warm fuzzy to know that you're accomplishing something that's helpful to your company, but also of interest to colleagues and others out in the market as well.
Very cool. In fact, I actually if I have clients who ask me this question, creating a category is the toughest thing possible. And I think using your analyst relations resources to do that is probably a very wise move. Instead of just saying like we're going to do advertising and marketing, you should do that too. But I think you get a better perspective from analysts even before you start. So that's a great point. But the other question is like, there's a lot of noise. I mean, today, I don't know about you, but the minute I wake up in the morning, I pick up my phone and I have 10 to 20 new updates from news, technology, from companies and everything else. So how do you ensure your company's narrative through you, stands out to analysts? And also, maybe I will ask you this question, will be very relevant and a good segue to Carter joining is, what's your best advice on, establishing a relationship with analysts too?
Yeah, that's another great question, Shashi. And it really comes down to a balance of not just focusing on the earn side of analyst relations. We're trying to earn influence in the market through the analysts, but the learn side is so important as well. And that's the side, the inquiries and the advisory time. Sorry, I've got a thing going off here. The advisory time and spending the time asking questions of the analysts and sharing vision and strategy with them to get their insights and feedback is so important, because these are people that have their ear to the markets that we're trying to target, and they're having conversations with people that we hopefully want to be customers. But the other part of it is, when we do that, and like we share a messaging framework with them, for instance, to get their feedback, it makes them have to stop, and focus and spend dedicated time thinking deeply about my company, my strategy, my vision, my products. And that's really the best way, I think, to cut through all the noise and get that focus time, from an analyst. And of course, if you can spend a full day with an analyst in a strategic advisory session, that's helpful. That's becoming less available, I think, to us these days, but it's so important. If you can get that, I always advise spending that time as well.
That's very cool. So what makes you excited outside of analyst relations and outside of work? I know we did talk about where you're going to be the rest of the week, but what other things that excite you?
Well, I don't know if you can see behind me.
Yep, I was going to ask you a question about that.
But it's college football season, and this is what aggravates my wife. I love my wife to death, and I have strong emotions about her, but I don't always show them. But when this TV has Alabama football on it, you'll see some emotions coming out of here. There's a reason why I have a dedicated room that's away from everybody else in the family, because it gets a little rambunctious when the game is on.
Very cool, Gary. I mean, feel free to stay on and answer some of Leonard's questions. I think he says technically you're both from the South. He's 100% right.
There you go. You just talk a little faster than I do, though.
Yeah, you're supposed to remind me to talk slowly. Yeah, that's true. So I'm going to bring on Carter, and thank you. And if we have a chance, we'll have both of you together too, if you can hang on for some time. So that was very interesting. I think I did do a recap, but analyst relations is different from PR, is what I got from this conversation. There are some tools that are available to us that's very useful. And, Gary was also wearing a red shirt, as Leonard points out. And now, without further ado, let's have Carter Lusher on the stage.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I am doing great. I'm really enjoying listening to you and Gary chat about analyst relations, and just looking forward to continuing the conversation.
No, absolutely. I think I have to stop saying I'm new to analyst relations, because it's been kind of 3 years since I joined the Infotech research group. But you were one of the first people I reached out to just to learn about the community, and you were so gracious to say, like, let's have a conversation. And time is really important for everyone. So thank you so much for doing that. I did introduce you, and you probably, I was very right, you probably come up on top searches that have to do with both analysts and analyst relations. So why don't you introduce yourself and also say like about your analyze the analyst's philosophy.
Okay, well, the elevator pitch is I've been in the analyst game for over a third of a century, starting initially with being a client of Gartner when I was an IT manager. So I come from the end user side of it. And then I said, wow, this analyst job looks like a lot of fun. So I joined Gartner. So I jumped to the other side of the table and did that for about 7 years, ended up as a research fellow and one of the top analysts. It was just a lot of fun and a lot of challenges. But the problem that I had, I was getting really frustrated, was that the vendors that I was working with were not giving me the information I needed, when I needed, and how I needed. And so as a consequence, I said, oh, business opportunity. So left Gartner and eventually started Sage Circle with some other co-founders and venture capital backing. And the whole raison d'etre of Sage Circle was to be the Gartner of analyst relations. So we were doing a lot of research around the analysts and the analyst landscape. That's when I initially became an analyst of the analysts because nobody else was doing it at that particular time. And then we were also developing software, which is why we needed venture capital backing. Because before, AWS, you needed to spend millions on building your own data center, which we did. Now, going forward, after a while, I said, I need to actually do the AR. I can't just be, doing research theoretically. So then I jumped over to the AR side of the table with corporate analyst relations at HP. And that was a very interesting time. The last 2 years of Carly Fiorina as the CEO, which were very tumultuous, to say the least, and the first 2 years of the Mark Hurd regime. And just seeing how, the analysts, my former colleagues, can be a real pain, but how can we turn them into advocates? And then I went back to Sage Circle with my good friend Dave Eckert, went back to being an analyst at Ovum, where I was a research fellow developing methodologies there. And then now I'm doing Lusher Advisory, which is a boutique research and advisory firm that's focused on one mission: helping clients thrive within the complex and rapidly evolving analyst ecosystem. Now, what's interesting for analysts for Lusher Advisory is that instead of only working with AR professionals, which is what I did at Sage Circle, or just working with the end users or the vendors when I was an analyst like at Ovum, I work with everybody in the analyst ecosystem. So my clients include analyst relations professionals wanting to take their program to the next level, to world class. I also have analyst firms who are my clients, which was kind of a surprise. But when they started contacting me, I thought, this makes sense. They want to know how better to deal with the analyst relations professionals so that they can get the best possible information from the vendors. I also work with the technology vendor executives who are looking to think about, hey, how can we make this more of a strategic practice? Or if they don't have AR, and it is surprising, you can probably back me up on this, Shashi, is that a lot of vendors don't have formal analyst relations practices, and they're really missing out. So vendor executives, VPs, and CMOs call me up and say, look, let's talk about whether or not there is an ROI. So when Gary started out with a discussion of ROI, that perked my ears up because, of course, that's a common question that all these executives offer. And then I also work with AR, PR, and marketing agencies, again, to help them elevate their practices. So that's where I'm at today. So what's really interesting is that even though I'm primarily known as an analyst relations expert, because the various vendors within the ecosystem want me to know about what they're up to, I'm also just a traditional analyst. So I get briefed all the time. So last week I was briefed by Verdandex, an analyst firm over in the UK, which focuses on sustainability and such like that. This afternoon, I'm being briefed by Nucleus Research about their AI. This is part of my AI research program. In a couple of days, I'm going to be briefed by an AR software company. Stay tuned on LinkedIn to see which one. And so I'm still an analyst, but I'm really focused on analyzing the analyst, and that's a lot of the my inbound briefings and such like that.
Yeah, I'm also very impressed by how you're bringing the community together. To everybody who's watching live, or if you're watching a recording, Friday morning, look at Carter's LinkedIn stream for it's almost like 5 analyst professionals to follow. I make a conscious effort to look at that. There are some friends that I already know, but there are a lot of people who I think you bring a lot of visibility to. That's good. I also saw a post from one of our first guests ever since I took this show over, was Sonia Vargas of Databricks, and she had a great example. And I think I saw you, just to the point that you also talk to companies. I saw that you either have done a briefing or you're doing a briefing on the ARIA of Databricks. There's so much to, yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, I did a research note on ARIA, which stands for the AR Intelligent Assistant. So like Conga, Databricks, which is a database or data and AI company, they developed in-house their own RFI tool. And it was just fascinating because, again, it was a case of taking out the grunt work from AR so they can focus on the strategic activities of AR, which is talking to you, talking to internal stakeholders, communicating back to the internal stakeholders everything that AR is learning about from their interactions with the analysts. And so if you're not being a spreadsheet jockey, you have time to do that. And so not only did I write a research note, and again, by the way, I'm being guilty of talking really fast as well.
Good reminder, Carter.
Not only did I write an extensive research note about ARIA, next week there's going to be a webinar with the Databricks team. Both Sonia, the head of AR, the other AR people will be there answering questions on the chat and such like that, as well as the internal developer of ARIA who used Databricks' own technology to create this incredible tool that really helped elevate AR to a strategic level, not because they weren't smart before, they just didn't have the time. And now, not only do they have the time to do the more strategic activities, but now they can react and respond to many more analyst firms that can come to it because, you know, every day, if you're in analyst relations, you get a new spreadsheet, you know, hey, would you participate in our research project? And it's just like, hey, there's only so many hours in the day. And so that's another reason why ARIA is such a game changer for Databricks, is not only does it enable the AR team to have the time to be more strategic, it enables them to interact with more analyst firms. And so that their dot is showing up on more and more of the 2x2s.
That's true. I want to touch upon something that you mentioned, and I didn't have it in my notes, but it's very important to address. There are a lot of companies that don't have an AR program. Some of them are actually quite large, right? Now, I myself, when I was a startup CMO, it was all about like revenue moving from 0 to high double digits, right? So the value of AR programs at that time wasn't very evident to me too. What's your advice to companies? And I'm going to actually talk a little slowly and also expand the question a little bit, because there are some companies that use their AR program only to get into like whatever is the latest quadrant that they think is important. But there are some AR professionals where it's two ways, right? It says that here's what we are doing, what do you think? And also tell me more, we are going to a new industry, tell me more about what your experience has been with this industry. And there, of course, like some of these large unicorns that have one-to-many briefings and multiple levels of AR programs. What's your advice to companies on starting an AR program? At what level, or anything else that you want to educate the audience on today?
Well, if you look at it from the point of view, and this is frankly, a lot of it is just common sense, is start small, have a good vision for where you want to go, and then just take step by step by step. Now, there are specific skills around analyst relations, and that's important. And as Gary was saying, the AR community is very supportive of folks that are new or are novices to analyst relations. So you can learn a lot online. I mean, there's webinars. I have a lot of research, a lot of best practices. But so does Sage Circle, my old firm, which has changed hands several times, or KCG, or the Knowledge Capital Group, or AR Insights, or Spotlight AR. So there's lots of sources of that. But what's really important when you're starting out is to, again, start small, have a vision of where you want to go, and then incrementally, land and expand within your organization. Now, what's really important for a new AR program is to educate your stakeholders. Because like you said, you didn't really get, what was AR about. And it wasn't just, frankly, it's not just about moving the dot or being on a particular report. It's dialogue. And I think that Gary used the D word as well, dialogue. In that companies can learn so much by chatting with the analysts. What have you been hearing about? What are the hot topics that you're discussing all the time with your end users, clients? Or, what are the topics that are cooling off, that are becoming boring? Because this will help inform the vendor's ability to develop a product roadmap, product strategy, revise their messaging, and such like that. So it's important to realize it's not just the vendor influencing the influencers. It's having realizing that you are a client, whether or not you are a formal client or not. You can still be a client of the analyst by just asking their opinion. And I'm an old Gartner analyst, and of course you're a current analyst. We can't help ourselves. If somebody asks us a question, we'll give an answer. There are very few analysts that will say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can only give an answer to my clients." Analysts love to hear the sound of their own voice. So don't be shy. I mean, and that's one of the big problems that I am finding with vendors that want to brief me. Now, remember, the vendors that are briefing me these days are not software companies or hardware companies or anything like that. The vendors that are briefing me are analyst firms. They are AR software companies. They are AR services companies. And they're not used to briefing people, that they're used to being on the other side of that table. And so just realizing that when you're dealing with somebody like me, that you have to think, well, how do AR people work with me, and sort of mimic that? It's a whole new thing. In fact, it's one of the companies that I'm going to be briefed on their strategy and their products tomorrow. Was saying, like, we talk about this all the time, but creating this presentation has been killing me because they've never had to do it before. And so if you look at it from the point of view of just making sure that as a new AR program, that you're having internal dialogues as well as dialogues with the analysts, that's critically important.
Yeah, great advice. Now, you did mention, what are some things that analysts need to do? So we are flipping over to the other side a little bit to be a good analyst. I absolutely get it. Like, if somebody spends time briefing you, I think you have to give them feedback on what you think. And in this world today, knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how much it has helped me I actually put lifelong learner here, because I can never say that what I know yesterday is going to be true tomorrow, right? So analysts also, I think, have an advantage when they listen to different people and get briefings from different people. They can form opinions on the landscape, which is very useful to people. So what are 2 to 3 things that you've seen analysts do very well?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the question. 2 or 3 things.
What are 2 to 3 like best practices that analysts could be doing? Like one of them is like, hey, answer questions. I think you need to at least be cognitive of the time.
Yeah.
What other things they could be doing? Maybe even like you're a pretty good. I mean, you have a good brand. So how did you build up the brand and things like that? Any advice to people who are joining the field newly?
Well, first and foremost, it's important not to make the initial outreach to a vendor, if you're an analyst, with, hey, participate in my research project, and here's 200 questions. You know, that happens so many times. That's such a turnoff to the vendor community. What you need to do first and foremost, and by the way, a lot of times, those 200-page or 200-question spreadsheets aren't even relevant to the particular market. So first and foremost is that, you know, a novice analyst, and, you know, I characterize analysts as novice, professional, and sages. And so the novices are often, you know, smart and understand the market, but they've never been an analyst before. But the thing that they've got to realize is that they need to come to the table explaining why a vendor should be interacting with them. And so who are their clients? What is the purpose of this research? What's going to be the deliverables that are going to be given and such like that? Well, even stepping back from that, think about doing your homework first. So go ahead and do a lot of research. There's a lot of information on the internet about, you know, any particular company. And of course, there's all sorts of AI tools out there. You can learn so much even before you make the initial outreach to the vendor by just doing a lot of the research. And you can actually pre-fill out some of the RFIs so that it shows the vendor you're talking to, hey, listen, we're sincere. I've been doing my homework, and here are the various reasons why you need to be working with me. Another thing to do is to realize that vendors hate surprises.
Yep.
And that, you know, they don't want to have to be in a rush to try to respond to you, because then they'll just say, sorry, can't help you out. If you tell them a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months in advance, hey, listen, I want to get a basic briefing about your company because I'm getting ready to do this matrix, whatever the matrix is. And so I need to talk to you in order to better inform my matrix. By the way, it's going to be in 4 months. And that way the vendor can start, you know, planning their workload and such like that. And might even come back to you and say, hey, listen, in 4 months, that's just before our big customer conference, I'm not going to have any time. And so that helps the analysts, you know, adjust their time frame because they were talking to the vendor early. So that's critically important. So no surprises, especially when it comes to research requests. And then, as I mentioned before, doing the homework. Rather than just coming in cold and saying, hey, do my, you know, my research project here.
That's true. I think a few guests like Maribel Lopez and even Shelley Kramer had mentioned this a little bit, like when people want to reach out to analysts, right? It works both ways. I think they just said a honest approach to say, just like you said, like tell us why you want to talk to us. Is it, do you want to know about the product? Are your clients asking about it? Or are you writing a research paper? That's one side of it. The other side of it sometimes is if there is a response that says, hey, our company only cares about X being on X position in something. I kind of, because they, honestly, they are always so busy with all the RFIs that I feel like an approach that is more conversational, there is an opportunity for that, which is like, sure, I'll talk to you. Let's just meet, and I can tell you what our company does without necessarily having to go through a whole process. So we want some words of wisdom here on how to approach analysts for AR folks, and how should analysts approach AR folks. So
Yeah.
both sides, and you're well qualified to talk about both sides.
Yeah, I think there's some common issues with both sides. As I mentioned before, why? Why do you want to have the conversation? Do you have anything interesting to share? And so that one of the things I've talked about a lot is early and often. So it's not, when I say early and often, it's not just, oh, it's Tuesday, I guess I should set up an inquiry with Shashi. No, it's like, oh, we've been hearing this from our clients or our customers or our prospects. Let me bounce this off of the analysts and see if that's what they're hearing from their clients. And so sharing information backwards and forth is so important for both sides. The analyst can reach out to the vendor and says, hey, listen, at some point we'll want to participate in a formal research project. But in advance of that, here's what I've been hearing from my clients. What have you been hearing from your customers and your prospects? So basically the same question, but flipped around from a different point of view. The other thing is to just treat people with respect.
Yep.
Now, the analysts are not enemies. The vendors are not scum. Just because a vendor lips is moving doesn't mean they're lying to you. That was one of the early things I had to learn when I was a novice Gartner analyst, is that, I went in and I started doing briefings with the vendor community. And, vendor came in, I can't remember to this day, the CEO of Pensothic, which was an early analytics company, briefed me. They just had this great partnership with Deloitte. So that, in essence, they had 20,000 salespeople now. I thought, wow, that's really impressive. 6 months later, I talked to them again. Nothing had happened. So initially I was thinking, oh, those idiots. They were lying to me. No, they weren't lying to me. They were being aspirational.
Yep.
They didn't understand how to work with a partner in terms of education, spiffs, salespeople are coin operated. God bless them, because that's how they focus on what needs to be done. And so, a problem from both the vendor side and from the analyst side is not being clear about what is aspirational versus real. Being aspirational is fine as long as you set the expectation. This is aspirational. And on the analyst side, aspirational will be, I'm working on this massive research project about AI adoption by analyst firms. So I'm getting briefed by all these analyst firms. And I think I'm going to have some research reports coming out in October or November. Well, frankly, that's a little aspirational. It might not be till November, December, just because it takes time. Yep. So as long as I set those expectations as an analyst up front, people won't be disappointed when my reports don't come out until December. If it's a case of the vendor side, again, aspirational, I had a thing that I always called red pen, black pen, back when we took notes on paper, which of course none of us do these days. But anyway, so red pen, black pen was my idea, saying that when I was talking to a vendor, anything that's public knowledge, I'll put it in black ink. But if it's confidential, if it's under embargo, if it's NDA, I'll put it in red ink. And that just made me look at my notes and say, oh, I know I can't talk about this, but I also know that I don't necessarily have to hold the vendor to account for something they told me under red pen. And I would have, vendor CEOs call me up and say, hey, Carter, we haven't had a red pen discussion lately. What are you doing next Tuesday? Let's go out and have some dinner together. And again, treating the analyst as part of their, in essence, their kitchen cabinet. and just be able to bounce ideas off of each other. That's critically important.
Very good, an important point. I see this, like I told you, whenever I go like this, I'm really happy when the CEOs or the product heads actually, have one-on-ones with analysts just to bounce ideas and say, like, am I thinking of it the right way? This is immensely useful. Don't go away, Carter. I'm going to have a segment that I'm going to call Marketing While Brown. I always wanted to have a segment, so this is my bucket list being checked off. But I want to bring you and Carter back because I think you're going to meet in real life sometime. So everybody don't go anywhere. We'll be back with both Carter and Gary. Give me a minute. Hi, everyone. You heard a lot of good tips from both Carter and Gary on tools that they use, how they're using it. And if you look at the previous episodes, we always have some good tips. Now, this segment has no connection with my job at Infotech, but I like to talk about things that I'm seeing and what is coming up. I think if you were thinking about text to voice and thinking that it will replace human beings, I would beg to differ. In fact, never have your CEO be an avatar unless he's sick or he's away at a place where he cannot join a conference. But I think you should use AI voice generators for things like training, for things like messages, for anything that you want to do, especially for global companies. I mean, I just picked up Merv.ai, but there are several companies like this where you just type in something and it changes it into, I think Merv has about 30 languages. It's well funded, even though it's a very relatively new company. So you can actually use it for introductions. You can use it for things like that where you may not have enough human beings to be there. So that's my point. I also solicit your recommendations on what I could feature in my segment, which is Marketing While Brown. But just check this out. In any case, I did post it on LinkedIn. So if you're not already connected, follow me, follow Carter, follow Gary Frazier, and I'm going to bring them back to close it out, this very interesting discussion. I hope you all got a lot out of it. I do want to give a shout out to, I can't identify who this LinkedIn user is, who gives me a shout out for being a lifelong learner and a lifelong teacher. I really appreciate that. I think everybody has to be a lifelong learner, especially here. So now, hello again. I'm glad to see you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time on the show today. So I think you both are going to meet in real life soon. I hope that happens. But otherwise, I just wanted to make sure I introduce you both. And just what are your final thoughts about the conversation, about the community? And you can ask questions of each other too. So.
Well, one thing I'm going to point out is that Gary had some incredibly valuable insight into ROI and then how you can track ROI via lead generation by downloads. And Gary, is Conga using like Marketo or something to be able to do, when you post a research note behind the paywall, and then in order to get the free reprint, are you tracking all of those sorts of downloads?
Yes, we are. I'm not sure that it's Marketo at this moment in time. We're sort of transitioning some of our marketing operations tools, but yeah, we definitely are using either Marketo or something like it.
Yeah, and something else to remember, and that's actually a great piece of hard data that you can use with your stakeholders. Hey, listen, and I've done this before myself. Top of the funnel, we've got this much coming in because of our reprint program, and then as you start moving down the funnel, then all of a sudden you can start saying, and these millions of final deals came from what's sort of at the top of the funnel. But something else that's much more difficult to get data on when it comes to ROI is when an analyst mentions you in an inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, why don't you have Conga on your short list? I mean, that is gold. Now, Gary, are you doing anything around asking the analysts about how often they put you on a short list or anything like that?
Yeah, we do have some conversations with some of the analysts, but as you know, there's only so much an analyst can tell you because those conversations are confidential, but they can give you some anecdotal information and oftentimes it's starting to pick up or hearing about you more in this area, or it's been really quiet, so we're not hearing anything. We also, from Forrester and Gartner, we also get inquiry analytics reports. So you can see sort of a trend, Unfortunately, Gartner doesn't provide the raw numbers anymore. So you can't see the number of how many inquiries you were actually asked about where you can with Forrester, but not with Gartner. And I'm not sure why they made that change, but it makes it very difficult to kind of really judge what your share of voice is in those inquiries. So I wish they'd go back, but Gartner doesn't listen to me.
They don't listen to many people, that's for sure.
I can just
on the business side, when it comes to the analysts, they listen very intently, but management, not so much.
I had this conversation with another CMO, and what they said is they track download from the assets that they put on sites. Like we have our own software reviews. The second thing they said is in the inquiry on their website or with sales, they do ask the question, how did you hear about us? So I think people have started answering that question a little bit more because 5-6 years ago, people were just saying like, hey, let me just put the second choice on the drop down. But people have realized that ROI is so important, both from the client side, that let me give them the right source so that it's attributed accordingly. So I like that.
Well, and the competitive intelligence reports, the win-loss analyses, and we use an agency that helps us with that also. But those are invaluable as well. And it's never really like, we didn't go with you because you weren't in the leaders quadrant. It's usually, we heard some good things from the analyst, or we saw that you were, highly rated in that. And so that helped us choose you, that helped us make the decision, or you weren't in the leaders quadrant. So that, didn't help so it's really kind of tangential. It's never like a black or white thing. It's usually a gray area, but it still contributes to where you can go in and say, look, we helped get that deal because we were highly rated by the analyst. But that's the most difficult thing, to your point, Carter, is to understand what are the analysts actually saying about you behind closed doors.
Yeah. And, something else that I always recommend to clients out on the analyst relations side is establish a relationship with your sales team and, educate them to be asking questions on a continuous basis about, hey, who are you talking to? And here in the case, who are you talking to? You, the potential prospect or customer. Are you talking to analysts? Which analysts? Are you reading any of their research and such like that? Because the sales reps have the opportunity to take have their finger on the pulse of those conversations. And it's also important for them to be asking that all the time, because an analyst can parachute into a particular deal at any point, either at the beginning helping with the short list, or later on. It's like one of the most common questions I get as an analyst was, what are the strengths and weaknesses of vendor X? Because they're on the short list, they're getting closer, and we're trying to decide. And so this might have been going on for 6 months, but it's only at that point the analyst gets hey, what are the strengths and weaknesses of Conga?
Yep. That's usually down to the bottom of the funnel, and that's really important conversations to have. I will say, as an AR person and to other AR people, you absolutely need to do that 100%, 1,000%, Carter, but you need to be ready, because just earlier this week, I was walking my dog in the evening, and I suddenly was on a Teams call with several salespeople, wanting to know, hey, can we put this person on the line with this Gartner analyst or whatever? So you need to be available and ready to do that, because these guys are out there, in the woods and in the front lines of the battle. So you need to be there to help support them.
Oh yeah, and what's really important, every one of those calls are gold for an analyst relations professional, because you are now getting information about which analysts are part of deals. So you know how to prioritize your time to make sure that analyst is always up to date. Whether it's you just sending out an email saying, hey, here's a nice little customer story you might like, or something of that nature. So absolutely. And I wrote a research note about how to get started, how AR can get started with sales without being overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Nice. Great note to end on. So everybody check out Lusher Advisory, check out Gary Frazier. I hope you will follow these folks today, and everybody else who's been a guest of this show. So thank you very much, Carter. Thank you very much, Gary. Gary is going fishing. Where are you going, Carter?
Carter's going to AR Engage, right?
Yeah.
Yes. That's true. Have a great day. Thank you very much, everyone. Really appreciate the audience. Leonard, thank you for the questions. And we'll see you all in October. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Sounds good.
This has been a Players Productions Network digital broadcast.